Hey everybody, it's Matt Shares, CEO of SPI. I'm here for another weekly installment of the Revenue Growth Help Desk. And I've got a very distinguished guest who's joining me today, who's not only going to give us some insights, but he will give them to you directly. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for almost a decade and watching his meteoric rise into one of the top positions we've seen when it comes to revenue growth leaders. So with that, Vince Lombardo, great to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate being here. It's been a fun run working with you guys and kind of turning the corner from existence to growth.
Yeah. So Vince, maybe before we get started and we hit some of the questions that we've been summoned with by our listeners and viewers, why don't you introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about the rise that Heartland's had, right, global, and just how that works. I think that'd be great for everybody.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the president of the U.S. Payments and Payroll division of Global Payments. And what that does is it encompasses the products and solutions we sell across the United States, namely under the brand Heartland, which was acquired by Global back in 2016. Largely attractive to Global was Heartland because of the distribution scale that we had created across the United States. And you know, history there is I've been here about 18 years, and I've gotten to watch the company go from kind of mom and pop startup through IPO, through some pretty significant issues and changes in the internal business, the public perception of the business, the marketplace, and then really had to turn on that kind of from adolescent to young adult age business growth engine to get to the scalability that we have now. And it's been a fun run, and you know, learned a lot of stuff along the way, made a lot of mistakes, and it's great to be here.
So here is what I would say, and this is an honest to God Matt Shares opinion, but it's backed by a dozen years of doing what we do here at SBI. Vince and the team, and because he will give a lot of credit to the team that they've created, in terms of revenue growth culture and what it means to be part of an organization that is sales led, revenue growth driven, and continues to outperform. This is one of the most iconic brands that I've ever had the pleasure of being associated with. So as you're listening and watching today, what I would tell you is there's a lot of good insight. And Vince and I are going to talk a little bit about agility. We're going to talk about learnings. We're going to also talk about changes he's made, even in the last 90 days, and what he's learned. And what I would tell you is, while you can't replicate because all your businesses are different, there's a lot of good stuff to take from somebody like Vince because he is the practitioner's practitioner. He does not live in the clouds. So with that, Vince, we'll start with the big hard-hitting question. You know, we're kind of 90 days post-pandemic, and a lot of people are asking now, what did COVID teach top revenue growth leaders? So I'll hit you with that one, and then we'll dovetail into a couple others.
Yeah, that's a great question. And like everybody, we're thinking a lot about our new strategy because it's a different world, if we're all being really honest. And not just externally, but internally as well. I'd say I would have told people 6 months ago that we were incredibly connected to our workforce internally, and that we really understood our customers and how they wanted to buy and where to meet them to sell. And I don't think we realized that we weren't as good as we thought we were at those things. And COVID really woke us up to that. We've made a significant pivot in our internal communications. It's been really interesting to watch as people have gone to work from home and deal with just a different level of stress and anxiety in their life, how to stay productive, stay in routines, kind of stay out of that state that most people go to, even if they're introverts. It seems like people right now are kind of longing for that corporate connection to teammates and such. So we've been doing a lot to connect our people. We've been doing a lot of virtual happy hour stuff that feels so weird and cheesy, but it actually works to make people feel like they're part of something. Lots of email communication from me, video communication about how I'm feeling, how my family's processing the times. And it's really kind of created a really strong gel of our organization. Our culture has always been at the top of our list to continue to grow and manifest around this revenue growth ideology. But what we have found is, as good as we thought we were, people needed a step up, and it's not slowing down. Even as the new events this week, I've got people wondering why I haven't sent more emails about my feelings around what's going on in the country. It's like, I guess I've created a little bit of a drug habit for the employees who want to hear more about how we're thinking and feeling about the business in the future. So internally, I'd say we had to be more agile to be more connected, which is harder when you're not together, but so necessary while people are all kind of processing this in their own way. On the customer front, though, I'd say, we've done a lot to channelize our revenue strategy over the last few years. I remember you sitting around with us, it was a while ago that we did this. You kind of threw some shots across the bow. We were so field-based, and everything was about the field. You're like, guys, you've got to look at other channels. And we started to, and it takes time to kind of evolve into a truly multi-channel distribution business. And we've done that now. We have 9 separate distribution channels. And I thought with those 9 channels, I was meeting all of our customers, prospects, where they wanted to be met to buy. And we found that we weren't. Easy to say, like, we got to get online. But what we found was we don't just need to get online, which we were. We need to make it really easy to buy online, which is like, duh, it's 2020. Yeah, but we're in a weird business of payments and point of sale and payroll. It's not typical to buy that stuff online. And people really like that relationship-based sale that we really project. But we're starting to find new ways and use new tools to have that special thing about Heartland, which is that relationship, but do it in a way that doesn't require we're face-to-face and we're signing contracts and doing the thing that traditional sales has done. And man, having to get into the moment of not just figuring out how to retain the revenue and meet the customer's needs where they were, but to keep the sales engine going. We actually had a record month in May, which is kind of weird.
That's awesome.
I mean, awesome stuff to show that the team can be so agile to go meet the customer that need to be met.
So Vince, like when you think about that, and I guess for the audience, if we normalize terms, when Vince talks about distribution, which is a term they use a lot, just think about your go-to-market strategy and all the different channels that you have in front of you, from field to strategic accounts to inside to different bifurcations of what the marketing team does to partners. So Vince, if you think about, and you are not a small company, right? I mean, you have thousands of sellers. So when you think about having agility and being a company of your size, if you were passing recommendations to those that are trying to leapfrog and maybe follow what you guys started to do back in 15, 16, 17 to kind of look ahead, a couple recommendations that you would have and maybe learnings from your experience where you have some scars on your back.
Yeah. So, we learned a lot about, I mean, honestly, I go back to this connection thing, but the more transparent you can be and treat people like adults as you make change, the more loyalty you're going to breed and the more desire they're going to have to get on board with the plan. There's this old adage of like, everybody should be involved and have their opinions. And while that's all very true at some level in the business, asking 1,600 people how they'd like this new thing to work doesn't really make sense. So you have to have your ears out and listeners and do all the surveys and all the sales satisfaction index stuff that we do twice a year and use all of that data. But at the end of the day, you also just kind of talk to people like freaking adults. And it's funny, but companies don't do this. And, like at some point in time, if people can't act like adults when they've been given transparent information, then they shouldn't be part of your business. But if you can't treat them like adults, then you shouldn't be leading, because once you treat people like adults and you give them that transparent, really clear understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, they have a decision. I buy into this and I want to be part of it, or I don't. And that's the risk that you take by going down a path, but it's just another one of the lists of risks that we have to evaluate. And what we've learned is in the past, we've made some changes and added channels and doing things and not been incredibly transparent about how, why, what, where, when. And we created a lot of dysfunction and broken relationships and disconnectivity with some of our most prime distribution people, teams, geographies. And we've pivoted in the last couple of years and really hard in the last 9 months where there's not a lot we don't talk about behind the strategy of the why, how, where, what, when. And we allow them to call their local leaders and ask questions and get people engaged. And it's really creating an environment where people seem to really buy into how we plan to move to that next step in the business and adding more of those channelized specialties and things without feeling like we've taken something away. We've intentionally tried to make sure we're not taking something away, but even if we need to, for the strategic direction of the business, we treat people like adults, transparently communicate, and have expectations of them acting like adults with that information. And I know that sounds like, come on, man, no duh, but honestly, if we polled our employees right now, all of these businesses, these people listening to this podcast, about how many of their employees feel like they're given true, transparent communications, I think we'd all be shocked. We were when we got the data, and how many people feel like they didn't really know what we were doing or what we were up to and why. And it's really revolutionized, again, that kind of gelling of the people most critical to driving that revenue.
Yeah. So there's a couple things I want to highlight for the audience that Vince said. He said it in the flow because it's natural for him, but I know it's not natural for many. Number one, he talked about the sales satisfaction index. Twice a year, they're taking the pulse on how the sales force feels. Many of you are familiar with employee engagement, someone like Gallup who does an employee engagement with the Q12. If you're not testing and checking like your what we call the revenue growth health index of your sales force, you're not listening to the internal customer. So that would be number one. And then number two, Vince, I think a takeaway, and we'll talk about this kind of going into this next segment, is you've seen changes coming in how your customers want to buy, meeting them where they are, and you said, hey, like I thought we were good, but actually we weren't. Like get online is one thing, like truly creating the right digital experience and having no friction is a totally different thing that requires a level of thoughtfulness, marketing, product, sales, customer success to have much more of a commercial supply chain. So my question, knowing that, is this. As you see the buying process continuing to evolve, what do you see as like the next one or two kind of big things that you've got to mobilize the team around that maybe we can follow suit around what you're doing?
Oh man, that's a great question. Not being too industry specific, what we're finding really challenging is the generational gap in the buying desires. Got the millennials that are really starting to become a large part of B2B buying decisions.
Yeah.
You've got the guys like you and I, they're like edge millennials, but we don't want to admit that we're millennials, right? Then you got the people that are, they're in their lower 60s or thinking about getting out, but they're still actively engaged, and they all want to buy very differently, and they all care about very different things. And to find a way to take your product set and make it look and kind of feel like three different things to meet those three sections of buyers, let's say, has been an incredible challenge for us as a business, and something we've really kind of directly worked towards to ensure that regardless of who is on the other end of that decision in a B2B space, they see interest in our plans, our platforms, our solutions, because it meets the needs that they have. And so the generational thing has been a huge thing for us to think about as a buyer segmentation or buyer understanding piece of distribution that honestly product marketing and sales, and I'm not kissing your guys' tail here, we didn't even think about product marketing and sales as the aligned necessity for revenue growth. We just kind of drove sales and dealt with what we had. And when we met you guys, we learned the value of this, and I'd say more than ever that we have steroids on that relationship, to the degree that understanding that we've got this great solution, but we're not meeting this type of buyer. And then you add COVID, and you add these social injustice issues going on, and the feelings and responses that those different age groups of buyers have, and how it even in this moment, this week, we're noticing changes in how those people do or don't want to be part of supporting or being involved in those situations, and how it relates to their business. It's been unbelievable for us to just recognize the separations of those types of buyers and what we need to do to pivot how we show up to meet that buyer where they are. And so I think I'd say first and foremost, understanding that generational difference as these millennials become more of that representative of the B2B space is a huge piece of it. Secondly, I'd say the product side of the business, it just can't stop evolving. And it's the first thing to think about when you got to cut expenses, because you don't want to kill your revenue driver in sales. Your product thing might have to change because you were planning on going here, but COVID makes you think differently. You might have to throw a whole bunch of stuff out that you were planning on doing. But continuing to invest in product to try to stay at least on par, if not above, in the spaces you care most about and you're best at executing is probably something that I think we've had to learn the hard way to really stay committed to. And so when we were forced to make tough decisions the last few months, we made them in spaces that didn't impact how we want to come out of this and what we're investing in to come out of this well. And we really kept our investments strong in that space of product, marketing, and sales to make sure we're driving the right messages to meet the right buyers with the right solutions.
Well, Vince, what I find so interesting, and for those that are thinking through Vince's comments around the way buyers have changed, is a big thing we're seeing is people struggling to repackage current products or legacy products and package and price them in a way that they're commercially viable in the middle of 2020 and they reflect the way deals are getting done. Because a big trend we've seen is mobilizing to get a deal done kind of through the middle to the end of the pipeline for most businesses right now, Vince, is really, really tough. Like getting deals done. We're starting to see a lot of new pipeline, and the businesses that we track, that's coming, but it's pulling it through. And what I'm hearing from you is thoughtful on packaging, right? When you had to make some changes, you didn't touch commercial, but you're still driving that interlock between those functions.
Yep, I'd say that's a good summary of that. I think that to the packaging point, price is getting really interesting right now. People have time to evaluate where they're spending money, and they need to because their revenue's down. And so the reason why I think we're seeing the more complex, longer sales cycle kind of back end of the sales slow down is because of all the internal junk going on in that buyer's business, and whether they're going to have the money to buy the solution or not. Is that where they're going to invest? Are they worried about a second wave? They need to protect revenue and cash on hand. And what we found is if we can pivot that conversation, I know this sounds like, well, of course, Vince, that's what you said, but seriously pivot it to how that value proposition actually improves their current status in the post-COVID moment, or it replaces the need for these other things in their business. And what better time than when your people are kind of wondering what to do right now and they're still employed by you than to invest in this new solution that's going to take you to that next step. And we've done a lot in a very sensitive, empathetic way to try to meet them where they are, but then show them, hey, this isn't a time to pause. This is time to invest, and we're here to help you invest well. And yeah, we've taken some price concessions where we need to, but largely we've tried to really turn that consultative engine on of helping them understand the extent of the value the solution we provide might offer. And that's helped us win some business that's been stuck in that space that you just mentioned.
That's great. All right, so the last segment, I guess, Vince, I want to cover is there's a big sweeping term around digital that has a lot of your peers really stuck. And an observation we've made over the past probably 12 months has been, it's not so much about digital transformation as it is about digital evolution and acceleration. So if you think about digital and that its impact on commercial, product marketing, sales, and customer success, are there one or two things that you would point your peers to of things that you all have done as you've expanded, whether it's reach, channel, different customers, et cetera, that they could fast follow as they tackle such a big academic term?
Yeah, I think I'd use the term omni, in that we're not seeing in our space as much of a trend in just digital, but don't just take me there, connect me across so that my entire business solution is single point managed. And so I've seen some of our peers in the space and some other B2B spaces, hey, we're digital now, but they went and built this product to go handle COVID and other things that's kind of like separate from their base stuff that they offer. And the customer's got to kind of buy from two different versions of you. And we found that our feedback has largely been, look, if you're going to take me here, connect me so it feels like one experience in buying from you, where my data is, where my invoice is coming in, the bill you're taking, my bank account, et cetera, so that, yeah, you've brought me to that mature space, but you've done it in a way that doesn't make me feel like I'm buying from two versions of you. That's really important, because it's easy to go digital if you're not trying to connect it to the non-digital that you might have had traditionally. And we found that's really important for the customer. And the second thing I would say, again, unfortunately, is it goes back to this generational thing. We're just finding that there are actually people in that middle and upper tier generation that want to buy online, but they don't have the same thought processes about where to click and what to do next, and like certain words don't trigger certain things for them. And it's been so interesting to try to understand more about how to meet the specifics of that buyer and where they are, and trying to be agile enough to try to meet that buyer. And so as much as we can, we're trying to take in data and really use this as a learning moment. You know, why did that individual go online, fill out the form, and stop? And what can we learn about that individual's profile to determine, is there some kind of group of individuals that feel the same that we're not meeting the needs of? Because digital doesn't mean the singular thing it meant even 5 years ago today. And so that's kind of tying into a previous answer, but it's been a big part of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So listen, man, we could keep going, and lots of good energy between us, but I know you have a day job, so allow you to sign off. I guess what I would summarize for the audience, a couple big takeaways that I learned today from Vince. Number one is the reminder of the internal customer and your sales satisfaction or revenue growth, your health index. You got to listen internally, right? Because that allows you to put the best commercial infrastructure in place. Number two, the evolution around your channels, Vince, and the way you're encouraging people to sort of think broadly and just be fanatical about being outward in with the customer. And by the way, I love the fact that as a 47-year-old, you told me I was an edge millennial. I'm yelling out of my office to my 4 teenagers that dad is a millennial. So Vince, you made my day. And then lastly, the move into digital. You got to connect it. It can't be we're digital now, because Vince, you're so right. It has to be an integrated experience for a customer, else it's a waste of time and you actually create confusion. So, well, continued success, my man. Great to see you, and I know you're thriving. It sounds like the company is, and thanks for taking time to share some insights with the viewers and the audience.
Yeah, really appreciate you having me. We'll talk soon. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, see you, Vince. All right, everybody else, you got some jam-packed things to think through. As always, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.